letters.
Okay, I actually do have 26 letters in my name. So people used to call me Alphabet in America. So you can call me Alphabet as well.
Okay, Alphabet, are you ready for your 20 slides?
Yep, let's go for it.
All right.
Right.
Over to you.
All right. All right, so I do have a short name, which is Phil. Hi from the coldest capital in the world, Ulaanbaatar. This is me in Incheon Airport in Korea, traveling to Mongolia after 8 years of studying in the US. I did my major in politics and media and master's in development practice. So I spent my entire adulthood in the States. And this is me 8 years ago at the Incheon Airport, right after I turned 18. So I'm officially an adult. So I just finished high school. I had no idea what I'm going to do in America, what I'm going to study. But I knew one thing: I was going to be friends with many American and international friends. But that wasn't the case. I imagined to have many American friends, but throughout my journey in the US, I always used to have more international friends than American friends. So I always wondered why. I always wondered why our American people are very close to me or to my other international friends. I spent the first 3 years of my life in America in a very conservative white city. Then in 2016, I moved to Minneapolis, which is more diverse and more liberal. However, I was more visible than ever. I still had more international friends there. People would ignore me in St. Cloud, but in Minneapolis, not anymore. I was highlighted because of my differences. So I learned that people always get scared of what's unknown. So I always used to go around, talk about my future, talk about my culture and my history, because I believe it's important to cultivate understanding, share our human stories, and make our visible diversity normal and make invisible diversity more visible. In 2020, I was living in Minneapolis, and on my birthday, George Floyd was murdered by Derek Chauvin. And it ignited the largest civil rights protest movement in recent times. This has pushed me to further understand systemic injustices that was happening because of our differences. So at the time I was doing my master's at the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I was studying development practice. I couldn't ask for better community and resources to understand what was really going on in America. And during the time, I was also working in politics. I was only a person of color among my peers. So I worked hard to ensure that I become the bridge between my candidates and the constituents. My state senate once told me that I had to leave the campaign because I wasn't reaching their target people, which was mostly white people, because I was working in very white districts. So this era of COVID, Asian hate was also very high. People would call me China virus. People would call me COVID in the streets. People would give me weird looks for wearing masks in the early stage of the pandemic. So it was a very weird experience. So after all this crazy ride, I came to Mongolia and we all looked the same. First, it seemed like there weren't much diversity around me anymore. And it was actually very nice for some reason because it was very calm. But then I joined my friends to be part of a movement to tackle some systemic injustice that I can actually see in my country. You have to take a closer look, especially at the young people of Mongolia. At more than 1 million people, youth aged between the ages of 15 and 34 represent the largest demographic of the country. But there aren't many public spaces for us to express ourselves. So on this day, there is no cars on the streets, so people would come up and express themselves. You may have seen this very famous picture, an Eagle girl. She lives in the westernmost province of the country, but also the most discriminated province of the country. They speak Kazakh language. They only speak, and then when you go to university, the exams are only taken in Mongolian, not in Kazakh. And Mongolia was a communist country for 70 years as a Soviet satellite. Under the system, people were expected to think the same, believe the same, and even look the same. And so in the past 30 years since the democratic revolution, I believe we have to learn our identities and express ourselves. The democratic revolution isn't finished yet on a human level, I believe. We need to discover ourselves and learn our identities. We have political and economic freedom, but people are still learning to express themselves, find out who we are. So the question is, where do we begin? And the answer, I believe, is Love Yourself. It's my favorite album from Justin Bieber. The word is very important here. This is where we start. Explore your interests, accept who you are, don't deny your feelings, be proud of who you are no matter what people say. That's what my experience taught me throughout my journey. And it's very important to celebrate yourself. This is me with my group of Mongolians in the United States. We are celebrating our country, our identity. And this is exactly how you create your community, because that's what matters the most, a community. I believe these differences are beautiful. It doesn't mean better or more. Differences are differences. Therefore, we have to learn what our identities are. I always wondered why American higher education system always pushed us to understand our identities. And I learned that you have to look at yourself and accept the flaws in the system and the culture that makes us hate ourselves. Compared to my high school peers, for example, I used to live in an apartment building while my friends used to live in Mongolian traditional dwelling called Gir around the outskirts of the city. It was a privilege for me to live in an apartment building, and that really made me who I am today. And it was a privilege, and I accepted. And I believe that you should know what you grew up with and what privileges that you came up with. Because as I say, differences. It just doesn't make you better, but it makes you understand who you are. So from your culture, I believe, take what you leave and leave what you don't. That's what Mongolian proverb says. And I think it goes for the same. The system, take what you need and leave what you don't. And this was my story, a boy who grew up in the post-communist state, trying to figure out myself while everybody is doing the same. A strong system under the Soviet Union made us forget our history and culture, and we have been discovering our past. And sometimes you may not like what you have discovered. You may discover something more, and that's fine, because diversity is beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very
So
much.
well said.
Yes.
Dang.
Yes.
Phew.
What an hour. Holy moly.
But rest assured, Phil, that, you know, I think the younger generations, especially, are going to be much more aware of their own individuality and of their own character, and are going to be much more accepting of diversity. You know, yeah. So there is optimism. I think we started it. And I'm sure that our children, your children, are just going to grow up that way.
Yeah,
you know?
my wife runs an international school. There are 34 nationalities. They don't know what diversity is. They don't understand because they live it, you know. And for them, it's not a question with all these different nationalities, you know. And we have warring. Warring people in the same classroom, you know, and it's fantastic, you know, and everybody gets on, and it's a really lovely world.
So the future will be brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you for having us in Ulaanbaatar.
No, thank you.
Thank
you
you
for sharing your story, and it is so important that you're contributing to the first steps to a better place. So well done. Well done.
Another city we've got to come to, Ulaanbaatar. So, you know.